it's Carolina, and I am going to show you the new North Collection presets. I'm really excited about this set. It's very soft, film-like, keeps the colors pretty natural. I just love this set, so I'm going to show you how it works. I've got a bunch of images here uploaded and ready to go, all from different shoots, different lighting, so you could really get a good idea of how these work. So I'm going to start with this image, and this is the straight out of camera, and I think I'm going to go with North 1, and I'll work on my temp and tint here. Maybe bring the exposure down just a little, and I think that's it. So that's the straight out of camera, and here's the edit. All right, let's move on to the next image. I'm going to just bring my mic closer. Hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Let's go with North 5, and I'm going to work on my temp here just a little bit. So this was shot in the client's home, and there's your before and after. Let's go to the next one. Let's see, I think I'm going to go with 8. So something to note is that 1 to 5, actually 1 to 6 are softer, and 7 until 13 have a little bit more punch. And then the outdoor ones, obviously they could be used indoors possibly, but they're really designed for outside because they have a bit more contrast to them and a little bit more punch as well. So these are the softest, 1 to 6, and then 7 to 13 they're really great in homes because they give a little bit more. And then the outdoor ones, and of course all these are black and whites. So I'm going to go with 8 here, and I'm going to bring my temperature up and my exposure, and I might bring the highlights down. All right, I like that. So let's look at the before and after. That's perfect. I'm gonna go on to the next one. So this image is straight out of camera, but I did just clean up her skin, so I'll just show you guys just to save some time. I cleaned it up before. So it is straight out of the camera except for the cleaning of her skin. And let's see, let's go with North 1. And it's a little bit bright, so I'll just bring down my exposure, maybe the highlights a bit, maybe the shadows a little. Bring this back up. Yeah, I like that. All right, so there's the original, and here's the edit. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, let's go with North 1 for this one. I love that. So I might actually just use a brush around her eyes just to bring the shadows up. So these brushes are included with the presets. I'm going to use Shadow Reducer. And just paint that on. Okay, so there's the straight out of camera. And here's the final edit. Okay, so for this one, let's go with North 5, and I'm going to bring the exposure down and maybe the temperature up a little, not too much. So there you go, before and after. So for this image, we're going to go with North 1. And as you can see, it's kind of orangey, so I'm just going to bring the exposure down a little, and I'm going to come down here. So this set comes with both the presets and all these tools here. So I'm going to go into the tools, and I'm going to grab this orange skin fix. So just be careful with the skin fix because it does affect the HSL panel. So it works perfectly in an image like this, but if you're working on an outdoor image or an image that has a lot of color in it, then it'll affect the other colors as well. So you want to be careful when you use it, but sometimes it's just perfect. So in this case, it's really perfect. So I applied that. I'm just going to bring my exposure back up a little. I went 2 down, and that. And I think I'm going to use some brushes here. So I'm going to go into my brushes and grab my eyelash definer. Where is it? Eyelash definer right here. And I'm just going to paint that onto her eyelashes. So I'm going to zoom that in so you can see better. Let's turn it off and turn it back on. So it just sharpens and really defines her eyelashes. And I'm going to do the same thing on her lips. I'm going to create another mask, hit brush, and I'm going to go to my lips definer. There's different ones here. So lip definer is the one that I usually use for newborns. It doesn't add any color, but it really sharpens the lips so that they show well. All right, let's zoom back out and let's look at the original and the edit. Let me turn those brushes off. So that's the original and the edit. All right, let's move on to the next one. Let's go North 1 for this. And I'm going to bring the exposure down. And that's it. That's all I would do here. So let's move on to this one. Let's go with North 6. And let me bring the exposure down and the temp and tint up a little. And I might bring the highlights down. Perfect. So there's the before and after. So like I said earlier, they're soft. They're not too intrusive on the image. They really keep the integrity of your image, but give a little extra pop, a bit of a film look, and they're really soft and beautiful. I really, really love the look of these. So here's another one. Let's go with, let's see, North 1. That's perfect. And I'll just bring the exposure up a little. That's it. So before and after. Okay, so this was obviously really underexposed, so I'm just gonna bring the exposure up. I'm gonna fix all these spots here. There's some dust in my camera, in my lens, in my macro. All right, okay, let's do that. And then let's go with North 1. Love that. I'm gonna bring this down a little. I'll bring the temp up a bit. I wanna keep this very soft. I'm going to use a brush. I'm going to go back to that lip definer. And I'm just going to brush that over here. So that just really sharpens her lips and just makes it stand out. And then you could also use another brush here on her chin. Let's go to skin and let's go with the red skin fix and just paint that on. It's a little bit too much, but Lightroom has this slider now where you can reduce the amount. So I would just bring it down a little bit. Perfect. So let's look at the before and after. Perfect. So let's move on. Okay, so this has a lot of green, so we're going to go to one of the outdoor ones. Let's try 16. And I'm going to bring my temperature up quite a bit. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So before and after. So like I mentioned earlier, number 8 to 13 are a little bit more punchy, so they work well for in-home sessions. So for this one, I'm going to go, let's go to number 8. Actually, sorry, number 7 to 13 are a little bit more punchy. I'm going to go with 8 and just increase my temp, maybe bring the highlights down. So before and after. All right, here let's go with 9. And I'm going to bring my temperature up, my exposure up, and I'm going to go back into the tools and hit the lens correction just to get rid of the dark vignette on the sides. And let's look at before and after. Could even bring that up a little bit more and maybe bring the highlights down. All right, before, after, perfect. Okay, with this guy, let's look at the softer ones. Let's see, I think I'll go with 4. And I'm just going to adjust this and this a little. Bring the shadows back down. And let's see, before and after. Perfect. I might actually also use a brush on his hand. So I'm going to go into my brushes and use the red skin fix. And just brush that on, just so it's a little bit less aggressively red. So here we go, before, after. And again, here you could also use the eyelash definer and the lip definer if you wanted to, just to make those features stand out a little bit more. Let's get the lip definer. Go with this one. There we go. Oh, and I just noticed he's got a little something here, so I'll just use the spot removal and just clean that up. Okay, before, after. Perfect. Moving on. I think I would probably do black and white for this one. Yeah, let's do that. Let me bring my exposure down, and I'm going to use those brushes again. I love those brushes. Let's do eyelash definer. Just really sharpen that. And I'm going to use the lip definer as well. Perfect. So there's before and after. Let's move on. Let's go with north. I think I'll go with this one, north 5. And I'm going to bring my temperature up slightly and my exposure slightly. And just bring the contrast and the highlights down a little. And I think I might use a brush on the parent's arms here as well. I'm going to use Glowy, which just gives a nice glowy tint to skin. And I think actually on Mom here, I'm going to add a bit of tint to it as well, just to make it a little bit rosy. And I won't do that on Dad's arms because his are already kind of pinkish. Okay, so I'll take another brush. Or I'll create another mask, I should say, and I will take Glowy again, and this time I'll just use it on Dad. And if you want to just see where you're painting, you can click on O so that you can see and do this properly. Okay, and if you want to erase, just click on Option, and that'll switch you to the eraser. It's a little bit big. If you hit the bracket key, you can change the sizes. And just erase that where you don't want it. On Dad, on baby's face. Okay, oops, I switched masks. All right, done. And let's take a look. That's the before and after. Let's move on. I'm going to go with, yeah, I think I'll go with this one. And I'm going to increase my temperature a little bit and my tint. Maybe bring down the highlights just a tad. Let me just adjust here. Okay, so Dad's a little bit too bright for my taste. So let's go back into the brushes. And there's a brush called Less Bright. Just going to make my brush bigger and paint that here. Just put that a little bit everywhere that I find too bright. Okay, and then I'm going to create another mask and grab my brush and just go back to my glowy brush. Right there on Dad a little bit so that the parents kind of match a little bit more and nobody looks too pale or too orangey. I'm gonna use my smooth skin brush on Mom. So I'm going to go grab that. I'm going to zoom in. It's a little bit too much. Okay, so I'm just going to brush this on. And that's going to help with the shine and just kind of even everything out. Just a little. And I'll do that here as well. Okay, let's zoom out and let's see before and after. The baby might be a little bit too orange. I'm going to bring my temperature down a tad, and I might go grab another brush. So let's do less orange Skin Fix here. And I'm just going to brush that on his head here. It's a little bit too much, so I'm just going to take it down a notch. Okay, before, after. Perfect. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, for this next image, I already cleaned it up as well. There was a lot of spot removal, so I'll show you. There were all those spots that I cleaned up before, just so you wouldn't have to sit and watch me do it. So here was what it looked like before, and this is where we're at now before I apply the preset. So I'm going to go with North 1 for this one. And I'm going to bring my tint up just to make them a little bit more pink. And Mom is a little bit bright, so I'm going to go into my brushes here and I'm going to grab my less bright and just paint that on her. That's obviously a bit too much. So I'm just going to reset the exposure. Just adjust it a little. And I think I'll actually use my smoothing brush on this picture. So I'm going to go with Skin Smooth Plus Plus and just paint that on. I'm going to put it here on Dad as well. And I don't really think Baby needs any. I'm going to reduce it a touch. And I think I'm going to bring a linear gradient over here and just bring my temperature up a little and maybe my exposure down. Okay, perfect. So let's take a look. So that's the before and after. Perfect. Let's move on. We're going to use, let me just straighten this out. And I'm going to go with, I think I'll go with 16, or here, let's go with 14. And I'm going to bring my exposure up, my temperature up, and let's see if we want lens correction. Yeah, let me put the lens correction on. And I might bring the highlights down a little more. Okay, perfect. Before, after. Let's move on. I'm going to go with, let's see, North 1 and North 2 are very similar, except that North 2, it has a little bit more of a pink tone to it. So I think I might go with North 2 for this one. I'm going to bring my exposure up and I'm going to bring the temperature way up. Okay, that looks great. Let me bring in a little more red. Perfect. So there's the before and after. Let's move on. Let's go with North 1 here. And I'm going to bring my tint up just a touch. I don't want to put too much. I'm going to bring my shadows down and my exposure. Perfect. Before, after. Okay, we're outside again here. Straighten this. Okay, and I'm going to go black and white. This is my favorite black and white. It's got a lot of grain, it's very filmy. This is the one that you'll see me using quite a bit. And that's it. All right, and if ever this is too much grain for you, you can easily go into the tools and turn off the grain or just the amount. You can go lower, you can go higher, depending on what look you like. Okay, let's go to this image. I'm going to use North 1, and I'm going to bring the exposure down and the temp up. I might bring the highlights down. That's it. Before, after. Okay, let's go with North 1 on this one too. And I might just bring my exposure up a little. Maybe my highlights will go down. Okay. Before, after. Look at his cute toe. Okay. Next, let's go with North 1 on this one. And I'm going to bring my temperature up and my exposure. Love that. Let's see before and after. Okay, let's do North 1 and bring the exposure down and maybe warm this up. And actually, I delivered this one as a black and white, so I'll show you that too. There we go, and I'll just bring the exposure back. There. I love how filmy and soft that looks. Let's move on. Let's go with North 1 again here, and I'm going to bring my temperature up. I might bring my exposure down a touch. I wouldn't mind if the background on this one was a little bit brighter, so I'm going to go select subject, and I'm going to invert my mask, and I'm just going to bring my temperature up on the background a bit to just really soften the whole image. That's it. So let's see, before and after. Perfect. So these next images are images that I didn't take. These are all from Signature Edits, where you can download free raw files for these kind of purposes. So I'm going to show you. They're with different kind of cameras, different settings, different photographers. So I'm going to show you some of the presets on these as well, starting with this one. Let's go with North 1, and I'll bring the temperature up and the tint slightly. Okay, the only thing I might do is just fix her arm a little. So I'm going to go grab my glowy brush and make that smaller and just paint that over her arm. Okay, that's it. Before, after. Let's move on. Let's go with one of the outdoor ones. That looks really good. That one does too. I think I'll go with this one. And I might actually reduce the grain here. It's a little bit too much for this image. And maybe add some sharpening. Okay, before, after. Okay, so let's move on. So this is another one from Signature Edits. I'm just going to clean her up a little bit quickly here. Okay, just get rid of all that. Zoom out and let's see, let's go with 4, but I think I might bring the saturation down, and I'm going to bring my temp up, my exposure maybe slightly as well. And the other thing I might do on this image is use one of my sun masks. So you can come here in the tools, and I'm going to go with the yellow one. So these are just to enhance sunshine that's already there, preferably. Don't just add it anywhere. So you want to click it, and then you want to open your masks and click on it, and then you want to resize it and position it wherever it should be. So in this case, it would be here. So I'm just going to put that right there. Let's see if I take it off. See, it's just enhancing that beautiful sunlight. Okay, and I'm going to bring my exposure up, and I might use a brush to soften her skin just a little. So let's go with smooth, and I'll make my brush bigger. There. All right. So that's before and after. I think that looks great. I'm going to move on to the next one. There's a lot of green here, so I'm definitely going to go with one of the outdoor options. I think I'll go with this one. And obviously we have a bit of work, so I'll just bring my exposure up and definitely my temperature and tint. So in an image like this, they're a little bit orangey, so I would just go into the HSL panel and adjust their skin myself in there. If you come here and click on the orange skin fix, you'll see that it affects the whole image, not just their faces. But I think that looks really, really good. And I would, like I said, just go into the HSL and maybe bring the orange luminance up a little and the orange saturation down just a touch to get their skin tones really spot on. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go into the HSL panel, and I'm going to just pull my orange saturation down and my luminance up just ever so slightly. And I think that looks pretty awesome. Let's see before and our final image. Okay, let's just fix the white balance here. I'm going to use the white of her eyes. Okay, that's a lot better. And let's go with North 1. And bring the exposure up. Okay, that looks amazing. There's the before and after. I might just bring this a little bit more. Perfect. Okay, let's move on. Let's see. I'll just bring the exposure up and definitely the white balance as well. Let's see, North 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They all look really good. So which one should we go with? Here, let's go with North 6. Just bring this up. And bring in more pinks. That's gorgeous. Beautiful image. All right. Let's leave that there and move on. Let's go with, I think I'll go with the outdoor ones. Let's do North 14. Bring the exposure up a little. Maybe bring this up and bring in some reds. And that's it. Before, after. I hope that gives you a really good idea of what the North presets can do, what you can do with them, and how easy they are to use. Like I said, they're really soft, timeless, classic, got a bit of a film look to them. So I hope you really enjoyed that. If you have any questions, be sure to get in touch. Thanks.